Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the third decan of Aries. I hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the astrology of the next few weeks. We're going to see some really important stuff unfold over the next few weeks with the giant Aries stellium. We're going to break that down through the language of the kind of the initiating event with this, with the new moon in Aries 3. We're going to break it down piece by piece. We're going to talk about Aries significations. We're going to talk about Mars. We're going to talk about the decans and the tarot. So if you're joining me here today, please leave me a comment in there. You can follow me over on social media at Spencer Michaud, and you can find me at spencermichaud.com. So a few things before we get started here today. I am having, friends, a big sale. So this is a spring sale. We're doing Spring Sale 2026 over at Spencer Michaud Astrology, and it's 20% off everything. All the readings that I do, transit readings, natal readings, tutoring sessions, anything of that sort, 20% off. Use the code SPRING20. Also, you can get 20% off all of my recordings in the store. I have a Decan webinar series that I did with my partner, Tanya Andrews. I have the actually, I did the Decan webinar series. That was the one I did individually. And then I have a Dignity and Devotion Planetary Magic series that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews. Great stuff with the 7 traditional planets. Also have some material there about the connection between astrology and tarot. So all of that is 20% off right now. So take advantage of that. That is good through the beginning of May. So I know things are going kind of haywire right now and finances are tight and things like that. And I don't want to make this work that I do inaccessible to people. So if you're needing help, reach out, and hopefully you can take advantage of that sale right now. Also, all of those readings 20% off as well. All right, friends. You can find me, of course, over at spencermichaud.com. You can find my beautiful partner at Third Coast Mojo. So Third Coast Mojo, run by my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, has all sorts of magically elected materials, oils, soaps, salts, all sorts of cool things that will help to remediate maybe some of the challenging things that you might have going on in your own life, in your own chart, maybe just learning how to deal with some of the twists and turns and changes that are happening. Here we're featuring the Sun and Leo Crown of Success oil. So if you're trying to grease the wheels for more visibility or for success in an area of your life, that's a great one to start with. There's also Mercury and Virgo Hermes Harvest, which is great for doing taxes. We're getting close to tax deadlines here in the United States. There's a Mars in Capricorn Iron Teeth, which is an exalted Mars to help you kind of break on through to the other side, give you the energy and motivation to get things done. We've got Venus in Libra, Serene Queen, which is one for keeping your nerves calm. And that could be really useful with all this Aries energy, right? Where everybody's kind of, everything is feeling like a life or death challenge. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And Venus in Libra can help calm you down and help you stay centered through all the challenges that are going on. And then Saturn in Aquarius scientific method is great, especially with Saturn being in its own, it's in its fall right now in a challenging position. This is Saturn in its own home or its own sign. And this gives it all its resources of patience, being able to see the big picture, having a little bit of detachment from some of the drama to be able to organize our lives in a mature fashion. So check that out over on Third Coast Mojo. I also have a newsletter that you can subscribe for. This is the Spencer Michaud Astrology newsletter where you'll get updates on when I'm going live here on YouTube. And you can also understand when we have launching new products for Third Coast Mojo, as well as the song of the week. Today, this week, actually, I featured it's easy for me to say, Appalachian Spring by Aaron Copeland. So that was a very dramatic entry into the spring season. You can also support the channel over here by buying a super chat while I'm live on YouTube or going to buymeacoffee.com and becoming a patron of the channel there. All of your donations really and gifts help to keep the channel going, and I very much appreciate all of you who are able to help out. Okay, so those are our big announcements. Just checking with our chat here. Stella Renditions here says, happy Friday, Spencer. Nice to see you, Stella. Hopefully everything's going well your way, my friend. We got a lot going on in the collective. We've got all sorts of new moon and Aries 3 stuff to talk about. I mean, it's a lot going on, friends. I hope that everyone has been staying calm, staying centered throughout some of the challenges that we've been going through. we're going to kind of break this down little piece by piece. We're going to talk about some of the things that are maybe on our minds in the collective today. If you have any questions about what's going on, I'd be happy to answer some of those as well. Pokemon and stuff is here. Nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing well, my friend. Thank you. Oh, thank you for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you. Okay, so we're talking new moon in Aries 3, 27 degrees of Aries on April the 17th. This is Friday. Okay, this is kicking off a weekend of pretty challenging astrology. Okay, so here you can see the new moon here in Aries to my right, however you might be viewing this here today. And first thing that I notice with this new moon in Aries, we have a huge, and I mean huge, Aries stellium. Now, stellium is a fancy astrological term for a ton of planets in the same sign. And here we have Neptune, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, the moon, the sun, and an asteroid Chiron all hanging out within the same astrological degrees. And a lot of times when we have concentrations in one particular area of the zodiac, we're really going to start to feel that energy quite intensely. And Aries energy can be quite combative. It can be initiating energy. It can be very intense. We can burn hot and fast. And there's not a ton of things that are mitigating that, that are balancing that out. There are a few things. We do have Jupiter squaring. So all of these planets are square Jupiter, and Jupiter is in its exaltation. So maybe Jupiter is trying to bring some kind of voice of reason to the table. We have another dignified benefic, Venus, here as well, in her home sign of Taurus, okay, her home domicile of Taurus. So we have an exalted Jupiter. We have a Venus that is well resourced in Taurus. The challenge is that Jupiter is making an aspect, which means it's able to provide a counter argument to the new moon. But Venus is in a condition that is like a blind spot. It's called aversion. So with Venus being in aversion, she might not be able to help as much as she might want to. We're going to talk about this as we get towards the end of the month as well. I was kind of starting to look around with the astrology of May, and Venus is going to be moving into malefic enclosure at the end of April and into for most of the month of May. So that is another challenge that Venus is going to go through. Another really important piece of this new moon cycle is the Mars-Saturn conjunction. Mars, as of yesterday, as I'm recording this on Friday the 10th, Mars on the 9th moved into Aries, its home sign. So we kind of put the match onto the pile of gasoline, I guess you could say, with Mars moving into Aries. And it's going to be coming together with Saturn in Aries, and we might see some action taken on some of the consequences that Saturn likes to bring. I was having a nice conversation with another wonderful astrologer, my friend Stephanie Warner, today, where we were kind of talking about potentially consequences that might come through people in position of power. We'll talk about that a little bit today, because there's a number of power players, power brokers in the world that are in the news that have a lot of planetary positions at this 7-8 degrees point of Aries that Saturn and Mars are going to be coming together. So we'll break that down. I'll show you some of the charts that I've kind of been researching. But this is really important astrology. This is a time where, you know, oftentimes we feel like Mars is the foot on the gas and Saturn's the foot on the brake. We may have a little bit of that experience, but with these planets being in Aries, just the gas is taking precedence over the brake on some level. So we'll have to kind of break that down. We're also going to talk about Mercury and malefic enclosure today. On this few days that are coming after the new moon, we have Mercury that's going to be enclosed by Mars and Saturn on the 20th, where it's going to be in a position where it's really under duress, right? It's trapped between two planets that are associated with challenging circumstances. So we'll break that down. That's on April the 20th. We'll talk about that as well today. And then Saturn is going to be entering its retrograde shadow at about 7 degrees of Aries. This is a place where Saturn is going to retrograde back to over the course of 2026. Saturn's going to retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries in the end of July, and then it's going to retrograde all the way back to the degree that Saturn is at during this new moon, 7 degrees of Aries. So there's just a lot of chapters unfolding of our various stories, and it's not going to be the end of the story. This is the beginning of a much longer narrative that is going to last for most of 2026. So we'll try to speak towards what some of those themes might be moving forward. Stella says, wasn't 8 degrees Aries where we had a big eclipse in the past year or so? That's a good question. Let me look. Let's see. We had a big eclipse. We had a full moon eclipse at 12 degrees Aries, and that's not the eclipse, is it? Let's look at the eclipse. We had a lunar eclipse at 12 degrees of Virgo, and we had an eclipse at 28 Aquarius, and then last year we had an eclipse in Virgo. Yeah, so March 29th, 2025 might have been 2 years. So March 29th, 2025, we had an eclipse at 9 degrees of Aries. So very close. So a good catch there. Maybe we are tracing back our steps towards 2025 and seeing what types of things were launched and initiated around March this time last year, and probably connections that we can make with that. So that's a good catch. Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward. I'm just going to get things back on the screen here where we were going before. Okay, so a lot of things to break down with this. We've had some pretty intense things that have happened over the course of the last few weeks. We've had a lot of saber rattling that has gone down. We've had some really anxious moments. I will say, friends, in the last couple of weeks here, really nervous about the state of the world, really nervous about some of the things that were going on and some of the threats and the ongoing conflicts with the United States and Iran and some of the the lines in the sand that were being drawn, and the ultimatums and the threats of violence and the threats of excessive violence. A lot going on with that. And it is a difficult time for sure, a difficult time to find peace and centeredness. And I've been struggling with that myself. So if you are all kind of feeling nervous about the energy out there, I just want you to know that you're not alone. And some of it is written in the stars. But we'll try today to take a balanced viewpoint with it. We'll try to stick as much as we can to the thematic material of the astrology. I do have some connections that I'd like to make with some important figures towards the end of the broadcast today. A lot of the people that you've been seeing in the news have positions at these early degrees of Aries, and I'd like to at least make those connections so that we go on the record and say, hey, these are some really important connections with these particular people, because I think they're going to be, obviously they're in the news now, but I think that there's some pretty intense astrology coming up for those folks as well. So we are looking at this new moon on Friday the 17th, 27 degrees of Aries. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to start talking about the sun and the moon in Aries 3. So we're going to start by bringing up our Deccan flashcard here, Aries 3, and we're going to talk about some of the themes here. I got a buddy with me here today. Radagast is here with me, my little baby kitty who, he's not really baby, he's about 10. But he's been hiding in the studio while I got started here, so he's being a good boy right now. His nickname is Peep Peep, so I call him Peep Peep. So Sun in Aries 3. All right, Sun in Aries 3. Palladiac says, you 40? How old do you think I am, Palladiacs? It's a mystery. Yes, I am an 80s child, so you can do the math with that. Let's see. So Sun and Moon in Aries 3. Sun and Moon in Aries 3 is a place of, it is a place where we are acknowledging how far we've come in the beginning of our story. We are maybe taking a little bit of a rest to catch our breath before a much longer journey. We also may be trying to convince people to our position. It is a Venus-ruled face. A face is a 10-degree section in the larger 30-degree sign of Aries. So it is like it's a room in the castle of Aries, right? Or it's a facade, I guess, in one part of it. And the planetary journey in Aries, which is the temple of Mars, goes Mars, Sun, Venus. Okay, so I've got these Decan flashcards here. Here's the Mars Decan. The Two of Wands is associated with that. The Three of Wands is associated with the solar Decan in Aries. And then we have the Venus-ruled Decan. So we have the third Decan represented and the first Decan very much represented with Neptune, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn all hanging out in Decan number 1. So if you've been following along with the channel, the first Decan is really about severing and separating from the collective to individuate, to say, this is not me. I need to cut the umbilical cord. I need to separate from the mother. There are also themes that have come from the early 20th century, late 19th century around colonization, around domination, going to battle, trying to become victorious in battle. There are themes along with manifest destiny that come with this Decan as well, with Aries 1. All things that are concerning to peace-loving people of the world. So what do we get when we move through the Aries journey? When we get to the second Decan, we've rejected that which we are not. And then we say here, this is the solar Decan, right? Where we say here is we're going to establish the rules of this new land or the rules that we do believe in. We're going to say, this is who we are. We have rejected that which we are not. And we say, here is who we are. When we get to Aries 3, then we are trying to gather a following. We are trying to gather a support system, right, for our whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, for our objective, for our new governance, I guess you could say, for the new virtues that we're putting out there. We're saying, I've stated my values, and now wouldn't it be great if you'd come over and support those values and get on board with whatever it is that we're trying to do? And that can be utilized for good. That can be utilized by horrible people too, trying to get you onto their side through propaganda and things of that nature. So it's not necessarily a good or a bad energy. It's just one that where you're trying to use charisma or humor or motivational speeches to win people over to your side. So The Burning Rose is the title of the chapter in Austin Coppock's seminal work on the Decans, the 36 Faces. So it's talking about this beauty that is ephemeral. Like Aries is an energy that is related to doing something intensely, doing something in a very yang fashion, but that energy not necessarily lasting very long. So like the rose is something beautiful, but that energy is very ephemeral. It's gonna burn up. It's not gonna be here forever. Now we have other significations with this Decan surrounding an oasis of some sort. One of my favorite, I guess, symbols of this Decan is Rivendell in The Lord of the Rings. It kind of even looks like Rivendell in the card of the Four of Wands here. Rivendell in the larger story of The Lord of the Rings was an oasis that the Fellowship met and got on board with the mission to take the ring into Mordor and rested and recharged their energy, but not permanently. It was a place to gather resources. It was a place to rest for a much longer journey ahead, We just had the spring equinox, which is kind of one beginning point in the solar year where we have the dominance of the daytime starting to return in the northern hemisphere. So we just saw the sun start to gather strength and gather power after a long winter. And here we said, oh, we've made this initiation, we've made this start, but it's a long solar journey to get to the peak, to get to the height, to get to the objective. So this is a little bit of maybe a breath-catching space within that. There are other significations that we can talk about here. We are trying to utilize, I guess, glamour magic in this decan, our dramatic abilities. We want to convince someone of our position. So I have a few questions that I like to ask for contemplation. And these are coming directly from my Decans webinars that are on sale for 20% off, along with everything else on the website right now, including all of my readings. So how can you tap into your personal magnetism to motivate or attract? How can you use diplomacy or tact to get what you want? That emphasis is important. We're sort of softening the rougher edges of the Aries Mars with this decan. We are trying to convince someone of our own position, okay, that can lead to getting what we want, right? You also may be having a celebration of who you have become. There's also significations around coronations. We chose the king, so to speak, in the second decan of Aries, and now there's a coronation or a celebration of that person or something like that. What methods might you use to inspire people to see things your way? This is something where we're learning new skills to be able to connect with people in ways that we might not have been able to before. If we think about relationships with Venus here, Venus in her exile, is this relationship permanent or a torrid affair? This is a great decan that could be associated with just one-night stands or something like that. How can you gather strength for the long road ahead? I think this is a really important part of this. There's a spirit in this decan called Eros, right? And Eros was this little cherub that had gold-tipped and lead-tipped arrows. The gold-tipped arrows would attract. The lead-tipped arrows would repel. So we have to think about the skills that we want to use on our journey, either to attract support or to repel the things that we don't want within our lives. So these are important things to consider with this particular decan. Okay. So let's keep on moving. We have the host of this decan conjoining Saturn and Mercury and Neptune, all these things in Aries 1. So let's backtrack to Aries 1 and recognize that oftentimes when we have new moons, full moons, we have to make a compromise with the host of the sun and the moon. In traditional astrology, in Hellenistic astrology, which is the type of astrology that I've studied, we have what's called the guest-host relationship. And what that means is that when a planet is visiting someone else's temple or land or abode, in this case, think of the temple of Mars, right? The palace of Mars. The sun and the moon are visiting the palace of Mars. Oftentimes, the host, Mars, would be somewhere else, only being able to give from the place that they are inhabiting. Let's say Mars was in, was in Cancer, which is a place that it's not very comfortable. Mars would be able to provide resources from a place that it was uncomfortable. It would be providing conflict and weaponry in areas of life that we would normally look for security. Now, in this case, Mars is in its own temple. It has all of the supplies, weapons, or whatever it needs to fulfill its own objective. And Mars's objective is one of severing, separating. In this case, in Aries, Mars's goal, in my opinion, is to sever from a collective to individuate, to prepare the spirit to inhabit a body. So if you think about the progression from Pisces to Aries to Taurus, Pisces, you've got kind of the oceanic oneness of spirit that we're trying to separate from, the oceanic mother, if you will, the womb, the amniotic sea. We sever from that sea of oneness in Aries, and we reject that which we are not. We establish that which we believe in, and then we win over a hostile crowd to get support for that individuality. When we move into Taurus, we see the union of spirit into a physical body in a physical form. Now, this is contrasted by Mars's energy in Scorpio. When we get to Scorpio, we get to the end of a process, a physical process, where the severing is severing that individual point of consciousness, that spirit, from a body that has fulfilled its purpose and now is decaying and returning back to the earth. It is severing to be able to reconnect with the collective, okay? Being able to reconnect with the collective, moving from Scorpio to Sagittarius. That to me is really fascinating. Okay, so Mars has these dual roles. This is the yang Mars that is severing to be able to go off on your own. This is very strong in Aries 1. It says, I've got an axe, right? This is what Austin Coppock's chapter in 36 Faces is called, the axe, where this tool for severing is not a subtle one. It is a very large, sharp instrument. Sometimes maybe even if it's not sharp and blunt, we're just waving it around indiscriminately. And we might sever the umbilical cord, but we might also create a lot of collateral damage while we're doing so. So there is an extreme yang energy. There is the possibility for hurting other people, hurting innocence while we're trying to establish this, this new energy. We also have some positive parts that we can think about with this. We have an ability to take risks. We have an ability to say, we're not going to think about this anymore. We're not going to weigh the pros and cons like you would potentially in Libra. We're not going to see it from multiple perspectives. We're just going to take action. That can be helpful in some circumstances. Now, it might be helpful when we are trying to start a new business, or whether we're trying to start a new project, or whether we are trying to start something that is important to us as individuals and as a community. It may be difficult when we are utilizing that same energy for actions that could have an effect on the entire population of the planet, of a country, of a community. The challenge with this in particular with Mars and Aries is it's running smack into Saturn in Aries. Saturn oftentimes talks about the laws of a land, the laws that take into the account of all of the needs of the collective. Saturn is in its exaltation in Libra, the opposite sign of Aries, where we can balance out the needs of various individuals to do what is most fair and most just for the most amount of people. When we have Mars and Saturn coming together in Aries, we might be taking action on rules, Saturn, okay, that are only servicing a handful of small individuals. And we've seen these actions play out in the collective over the past few weeks, and we might see these actions potentially supercharged moving forward in the next few weeks. We had a moment last Monday where we had an ultimatum and a deadline where it seemed to be suggesting that the president was threatening to, quote unquote, wipe out an entire civilization. Those types of actions and rhetoric are not serving the collective. They are serving the whims of one individual that, quite frankly, is kind of off his rocker. And this is the kind of the energy that we see. We got a reprieve from that. I'm a little bit nervous about this time period coming up after this new moon. I will show you some connections with some of the world leaders because there is potentially consequences that come from that overtly yang, aggressive energy. Like I was speaking with my friend Stephanie, Saturn is a planet of consequences. Saturn its role sometimes is to be a planet of Nemesis. Nemesis was a goddess that restored right proportion. Oftentimes when we see Saturn in a particular sign, it is going to rebalance the energy of that sign. It is going to increase that which is lacking and decrease that which is excessive. It also brings consequences for abusing the type of energy that we see in the sign. So the abuse of Aries energy, overly aggressive, yang, threatening, warlike, the consequences might be coming down the pike for leadership that proposes those and utilizes those things irresponsibly. One can only hope as we try to restore some sanity to our collective. So that's Mars in the first decan of Aries. Really powerful place for Mars. As individuals, good for initiating things as long as we pace ourselves. I think that there may be some things where we don't have the luxury of pacing ourselves, but I do think that with the polycrisis that we experience right now in this moment in time, the flooding of the zone of distractions and of things that make us worried and tense, we do need to pace ourselves when it comes to our nervous systems. If we burn too hot, if we burn too angry, if we get off our center, we're not going to be able to sustain the type of action that will lead to changes over time. So I think that's the part of the counterbalance to this energy is how do we sustain the type of energy that we need to make change over time. Let's see. We've got some fun people joining us today. Sprinkle 777 here. Shaylee is here again. Nice to see you, Shaylee. Hope everything's going well your way. Hope you're doing well. Okay. And we've got a troll in the chat here too. All right. So, little housekeeping there. So let's move forward. Let's talk about the first aspect. So one of the things that we like to do here is talk about what might unfold after the initial new moon. Okay. So we have the new moon on Friday. And one of the things that traditional astrologers like to look at is what is the first aspect that is going to be unfolding after the moon is released from the bond. Okay, so after it is released from the bond. What that means is when together with the sun, it's under the beams of the sun and it reveals itself at that waxing crescent moon. And oftentimes when the moon is underneath the bond, it's sort of like its ability to bring things into being is sort of delayed, right? It is like held in check. And then once it's released from the bond, the moon, which is kind of in traditional astrology like a manifesting planet, right? Bringing the light of the other planets down to Earth and into a body, into physical form. Those capabilities are supported once again. So what we're seeing with the first aspect of the moon is it's going to sextile Jupiter at about 17 degrees of Taurus, right? So we've got Jupiter at 17 Cancer, and we have the moon at 17 degrees of Taurus. So this is the moon at the height of its powers, really. This is an exalted moon that is going to be also in its own decan and its own face, and it's going to be making a positive aspect with Jupiter in its exaltation. So there could be some really positive things that come through this energy as well. We might have the ability to pace ourselves well if we make an initiation start. One of the significations around the moon in the second decan of Taurus is learning how to work hard, but then also how to rest and how to do just as much as we need for that day. Like think of a gardener who is watering just enough water that plant needs for the day or the week, etc., without overdoing it, and then letting nature do the second part of the magic, I guess you could say. So this is another thing to consider is How do we do what is necessary after we make the start and let the process play out? I think this is what this is speaking towards here. We're also going to have Mars conjoining Saturn. Okay, so this is kicking off this intense weekend with this big stellium, this big stack up of planets, right? So what we're going to be seeing here the next day on the 19th here is we're going to have the Mars-Saturn conjunction, all right? And this is going to be a lead up to Mercury coming into malefic enclosure the next day, okay? Oh, let's see. Just looking through the chat here again. So Mars-Saturn conjoining. Mars, a planet that likes to sever and separate. Saturn, a planet that likes to cast things into exile in traditional astrology. It is also a slowing force, where Mars is a force that speeds things up. Mars likes to heat things up. Saturn likes to cool things down. They are contradictory energies in that way. So there is this, like I said, this 1 foot on the gas, 1 foot on the brake type of experience. What I will say, though, is that Saturn being a planet of consequences and Mars meeting up with it, there is action taken to initiate consequences. And this could be with the checking of aggressive power. This could be of something where we are seeing leadership that has abused power facing consequences. I think that there's a lot of those particular significations that could be coming to the fore potentially. Painted Turtle is here. What's up, Lauren? Nice to see you. Says, what's interesting too is that Pisces 3 is polishing that axe with Mars rulership before Mars ever enters Aries, which is interesting. We can see the organizing action of the larger scheme. Thorin may shoot his arrow and besiege the mountain, but the Arkenstone still moves under cover. Hey, I like that. A Lord of the Rings reference. Thorin Oakenshield, the one of the dwarves of Middle Earth, right? Yeah, I think that Mars in Pisces is also dignified in its own decan, its own face. Mars in Pisces is taking action based on an ideal, based on sacrifices necessary to achieve an objective, an idealistic objective. I would say the energy of Mars in Pisces 3 is sort of like it's like a crusading energy. We've seen some talk in the collective about holy wars and things of that nature, which I think is very, very destructive. And yes, there has been like the actions have been taken based on some kind of, I don't know, illusion as well. Like where people think that this is going to, I don't know what people think anymore. Like I think that there's people that aren't really thinking, they're just taking action and doing it in a very self-serving manner. So yeah, I agree that there's some crazy things going on. Lawrence says Mars is divine action. I could see that. But again, with Mars in the first decan of Aries, that action may be motivated by a desire to dominate, a desire for violence, a desire to control someone or something, a desire for manifest destiny, for taking over new territory. And I know that that's not the whitewashed version that sometimes we want to say with modern astrology. A lot of times we want to find the silver lining within everything and always have some kind of gentle way of describing these things. I think that's doing a disservice to the symbolism that comes to us through multiple generations, and it causes us to miss some of the things that we are experiencing in the collective. It would be a mistake to say that the actions of various world leaders right now weren't in service of trying to annex countries into their own power and control. We've seen this with the actions of Israel, we've seen this with the actions of Russia, and we're seeing this with the actions of the United States. So there is definitely something to be said about acknowledging the real difficult parts of Aries 1 as well. Devin is here. Selena's Gateway. What's up, Devin? Devin, nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way. Lauren says it's divine action in its highest expression of good. I could see that. And again, I think that one of the things that we are trying to figure out as we move forward with our analysis with some of these things is it's hard to recognize it in the moment when we're going through suffering and we're seeing human suffering and animal and tree and land suffering. But I think that there's an argument that could be made that, yes, there is a divine plan and that there is a longer story and narrative that is coming through some of these difficult challenges. That doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge that the time that we're going through is challenging. Maybe there is a bigger picture that is playing out, the cosmic, timeline that we are trying to understand through the language of astrology, but might not always be able to see everything. And I think that one of the things I've been seeing a lot on social media recently is how do we deal with the anxiety that we might get by studying astrology? Because that can be a very real thing. We can see some of these aspects coming up, and it can lead to a lot of unsettledness and imbalance and worry and anxiety. It can also prepare us for challenging things. I think that if we acknowledge that some of these aspects might bring difficult experiences, it may allow us to prepare in advance. Maybe we clear our schedule a little bit. Maybe we double down on things like our self-care, exercise, sleep, eating healthily. Maybe we reach out and build more community to build resilience if there are things coming down the pike that are going to be challenging and difficult. So, I think that Mars has its function. I think that there are times when we do need to sever away from the collective and strike out on our own, and that is supported here as well. But the combination of that with a fallen Saturn means that a lot of those actions that are taken are in service of creating structure that only serves individuals. And that is a contrary energy to where Saturn functions at its highest potential. So I think that acknowledging that is important. Devin says, that's right, Spencer. The macro story requires us to take action as well as acknowledge the trials that we're facing. And we do need to face them. We do. For a long time on this channel, I focused on just I tried to keep it less controversial by talking more about how this would affect us personally as individuals, really focusing on just the symbols themselves. But as I've moved forward with this journey, I do think that there is a personal responsibility to talk about some of and make the connections to the macro issues. And when appropriate, to denounce things that look hazardous for people, to speak your truth through the language of the planets. It does make it slightly more subjective. I know some people will bristle at subjective astrology versus objective astrology. I don't think it's honest, though, to be able to think that an astrologer is completely objective. I don't think human objectivity in a pure form actually exists. I think everything is filtered through a personal consciousness. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that if we're going to understand symbols and we're going to utilize that to make our worlds a better place, I think we do have to speak out about these things. If we're going to use these symbols for self-aggrandizement to say, look I'm right and this other person's wrong, that's not going to help anybody. I think that there's ways to do this work where you can speak truth to power, you can look for connections, and there is going to be some subjectiveness to it. But yes, macro story requires us to take action as well as acknowledge the trials we face, and we do need to face them. I also think too, beyond just the subjectivity, when we acknowledge the dark side of these planets and these signs and these symbols and these stories, what we're doing is we are validating people's experiences who might not be having a great time throughout all of this. I think that there is legitimate human suffering going on right now, and we can see it spoken through the language of the astrology. And if we try to just wipe that away and just say, well, you know, I mean, I don't want to be glib about it, but if we try to polish it, if we try to polish the astro turds, okay, we're really doing the people who are going through the things a disservice. Doesn't mean we can't speak to both sides of what is happening as far as the potential for good. But I'm kind of done with spiritual bypassing. I think that is something that a lot of us in this field have been guilty of. And honestly, I don't know how popular it makes people being authentic. I would say that sometimes people mask and tell people what they want to hear so that people keep coming back to them. I don't like astrologers like that. I don't like people like that. I want someone to tell me how it is. I want someone to tell me where they stand. And by doing that, I think that allows me to be more authentic and in that regard as well. Okay. So as we move forward past this Mars-Saturn conjunction, we have the sun starting its journey through Taurus. So the sun's going to move into Taurus on the 19th through the 30th. And that 20th, the Monday after the new moon, is a really important day astrologically. There's just a lot happening that day. And a lot of it has connections with powerful people in the world. And I'll show you some of those connections. I'll show you some of my notes. So first of all, you can see here that Mercury is moving in between Mars and Saturn. That's called a malefic enclosure. These two planets, Mars and Saturn, were classified as malefic planets, whereas Venus and Jupiter were classified as benefic planets in traditional astrology. Really what that means is they were antithetical to life. Saturn was considered very cold and led to rot and decay. Mars was considered very hot and would lead to drought and things drying up. Whereas Venus and Jupiter brought life to things. So we know that their death and decay is important on this planet and that it is part of the cycle of the whole. But as human beings, we have a sense of self-preservation, right? We might enjoy the experiences of Venus and Jupiter more than we would the experiences of Saturn and Mars. Now, I know that some of you will make arguments. They're like, I love Saturn, I love Mars. And in general, there are times when it's appropriate and it can even be somewhat satisfying. But generally, these are the experiences like experiencing loss, experiencing death, experiencing endings, experiencing injuries and illnesses. All of those things often are associated with those two planets. Now, Mercury is going to be between the rock and the hard place. All right, this is a time, a day. It's really lasting just one day in this instance. Although we will show you by the end of the broadcast today, Venus going through an entire month of this energy. So stay tuned for that. But Mercury is going to be really pressured. And this degree, 7 to 8 degrees of Aries, it is important because Saturn is going to enter into what's called its retrograde shadow at 7 degrees of Aries, where it is going to station retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries and go all the way back to 7 degrees Aries when it turns direct on December the 10th. It stations retrograde on I believe, July the 26th, and then it stations direct on December the 10th. Okay, so when we are entering into this territory, these are very activated degrees. Okay, so Mercury conjunct Saturn, malefic enclosure. It ends when Mercury conjoins Mars at the end of the day. Couple people that you should probably keep your eye on. I have a number of charts here. First of all, the President of the United States has Mercury at 8 degrees of Cancer. This entire stack up of planets in Aries. Okay, let's go back to, so we've got the new moon. Let's go to that day, the 20th, because there is a narrative that is forming here. So we've got this huge stack up in Aries making a square to Trump's natal Mercury. All right. So a pretty big challenge from the 9th house to his 12th house Mercury. The 9th house is often associated with two things in particular. One, places that are foreign, all right, like places that are not familiar. It's also associated with the law, the legal system, higher education, things like that. There is a challenge coming to him from potentially a foreign place that involves the law or the legal system, all right? And it's putting a lot of pressure on his natal Mercury, which is the host of his sun in the 11th house. So this is the connections that we're making here. I would also offer that this energy that is putting pressure on someone's natal Mercury, the way that they communicate, their ability to make exchanges, their ability to move from one place to another. This is also activating Pete Hegseth's natal Mercury, okay, with a square from his 5th to his 8th house. Right? He has Mercury almost at the same degrees of Donald Trump. So he's going to be feeling the pressure on this day as well. There are a number of other power players here too. Jeffrey Epstein has the moon at 7 degrees of Aries. All of these planets are going to be activating his natal moon. The sun moving into Taurus is going to activate the square between his natal sun. Now you may be saying, well, hold up, Spencer, isn't that guy dead? Well, what we have seen over the course of studying lots of charts is that charts remain active after a person is deceased. And a lot of their, I don't know, their spirit, their energy, whatever it is, we can still become aware of it in the collective, and actions based on their life or the actions they took in their life could be activated when prominent parts in their chart are lit up. So you've got another contact here with the sun, square sun, and with the big stack up right on the natal moon, okay, which is associated with Epstein's 7th house, right? His open enemies, his partners, people who he was working with potentially. We also have a couple of other people to keep in mind that we have here. First of all, we have a guy named Sam Altman, who you've heard me talk about on this channel as the CEO of OpenAI, who owns ChatGPT. He has Venus retrograde at 6 degrees of Aries in the 12th house and Mercury at 7 degrees of Aries, the exact degree that Saturn is going to be retrograding back to, and this giant stack up is. There's been a lot of talk about the challenges with OpenAI. They've recently had to shut down their generative AI model, Sora. There was some accusations leveled at Sam Altman with abuse with one of his siblings. The wheels seem to be unraveling in his life, and understandably so. This is a person who has talked about creating human intelligence and turning it into a utility that people have to pay him to use, which is very dystopian and very disturbing. You could also see on this day, Venus is going to be at 25 degrees of Taurus, which is Algol, activating Sam Altman's moon and Mars. Another figure that has been in the news recently is Melania Trump. Okay, so Melania is, let's see if I can open that here. She has an untimed chart, but she also has Chiron at 8 degrees of Aries. So Chiron is an asteroid that's often associated with the wounded healer, like a wound that someone has sustained that is unhealable. And this stack up activating a wound that she has that may not have been healed could speak to her association with Trump and with Epstein and all of these people in the collective. There's been some talk of her making some revelations moving forward as well. The other thing I would say about Melania Trump's chart right now, two things. She has the sun at 5 degrees of Taurus, and that sun is being squared by Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. And every time a planet ingresses in Taurus, it's going to activate her natal sun and Pluto here. Okay, so it's going to activate the sun at 5 degrees of Taurus and then the square to Pluto. So eventually Mars will ingress, Mercury will ingress. We have Venus that ingressed a few, that just ingressed into Taurus as I'm recording this. And then she is coming out and talking about the victims in the Epstein case. So another person to keep an eye on. And then one more just to keep in the back of your mind. This guy is named Peter Thiel. This is the owner of a surveillance company called Palantir, which is ironic because he's utilizing language from the Lord of the Rings, these globes that were used to spy on people. And he has Saturn at 8 degrees of Aries. So this is the beginning of his Saturn return, and he has a number of potential stack ups on his natal Saturn, which is retrograde in Aries at 8 degrees of Aries. A lot of the talk around Peter Thiel is that he has donated a large sum of money to J.D. Vance. He is one of J.D. Vance's biggest campaign contributors. And there is some talk about him kind of being the Geppetto puppet master behind a guy like J.D. Vance. So that could also be playing a significant role. And then finally, we have Benjamin Netanyahu, who has Mercury at 9 degrees of Libra. And this big stack up is going to be opposing the natal Mercury of Netanyahu. Now, here's the thing. All of these people have enormous power and influence in the collective, in the actions that we are all going to be subjected to and beholden to. There's definitely an intermeshing of these folks. Like we have talked a lot on this channel about the potential for the billionaire class to create distractions from their corruption by perpetuating the capitalistic war machine. And that's something that we've seen in recent weeks, months, etc., where to avoid consequences, there have been a lot of, I don't know, we've seen what's called flooding the zone. And it makes me nervous to see the potential for accountability coming for a lot of these powerful people and what they might do to avoid, facing the music. We've already seen what these people are capable of to avoid facing accountability. Are they going to escape accountability again? That is yet to be determined. I will say this, the things that are initiated during this powerful time, they are going to be playing out for the rest of the year. I think that Saturn is going to, even if it's not all resolved, Saturn is going to retrograde back to this degree and say, let's say that there is an escape of accountability yet again. We're going to revisit this whole scenario back in December. December 10th is when Saturn is going to retrograde all the way back to these degrees and then station direct again. So whatever we are seeing initiated, it is not the end of the story. It is one chapter, a powerful potential beginning that could include all of those people that I just listed, all right, that all have prominent contacts with these degrees of Aries, whether it's through planets in their own chart, squares to the planets in their own chart, or oppositions to planets in their own chart. And all of these people are related to the collective story and zeitgeist that we're experiencing right now. So make of that what you will. I just wanted to show my work and kind of connect some of the dots that I've been researching over the last few weeks. Let's see. Painted Turtle says, wow, nothing quite says surveillance like Saturn and Aries, this guy. Yeah, if we're referring to Peter Thiel, that's one of his dreams, is just to be able to insert himself into everybody's lives by, having a technology like Palantir that is able to surveil and control what people do over time. So very scary. People should understand who that person is, and the amount of money that he has in politics and in lobbies and things of that nature. And then protect your privacy and your data online if you can. I mean, I've been going through a lot of privacy and data checks recently. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's not easy to get away from the surveillance, but we do have to make attempts to protect our privacy and to protect our ability to make decisions that aren't influenced by large tech CEOs. Devin says, we don't have a time chart, but Greta Thunberg has Moon, Sun, Chiron, and Mercury in Capricorn scoring all this. Interesting. I wonder if I have her. I don't know if I have her chart in here. I might. I would like to look at that. I love being able to see, just to see kind of yeah, I do have her chart here. So there's Greta's chart. So yeah, she has the sun and the moon. It's not timed like you said. Actually, this has a time on it, 8:53 a.m. Who knows? But yeah, she's getting a big square there too. We'll see if she's part of the story. Not as an exact hit as some of the other ones here, but definitely part of the equation potentially. Yeah, Peter Thiel, exactly, Lauren. He's not a good dude. Devin says also her Saturn in Gemini is going to be involved with that outer planet wedge of Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Couldn't imagine having a Uranus cross my Saturn before my Saturn return. Yeah, she has had quite a life so far up to this point. I can't imagine being a young teenager and speaking out as confidently as she did with truth to power and literally taking people into war zones and protesting. And that takes some enormous courage and enormous, maybe a big heart too, as far as caring about the future of our community and of our planet. So I wish her protection, I guess I will say. Lawrence says, spiritually protect your devices is a thing, although be prepared that Uranus and Gemini will show what it needs to strike light, to lightning strike consciousness. Yeah, Lauren, that was one of the next things that we were going to talk about here is we have some really interesting unfolding with Venus and Uranus and then moving into the Gemini part of the chart. So after we get past this malefic enclosure energy, after we get past the Saturn entering its retrograde shadow, Mercury conjunct Mars, the next kind of big thing that we have is a Venus conjunction with Uranus. So this is sort of like the last gasp of Venus in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus before both of those planets move into Gemini. The Taurus 3 energy is more about remedying something, of acknowledging something that's fallen into disrepair and corruption, and maybe even asking for repentance. Like there is a spirit in that decan called the Litai, where there are these old hobbled women that follow behind a demon called Eight, who basically would step on the heads of mortals to achieve their ends. So maybe there is something where we find a lightning strike of repair, of being able to mitigate something that's fallen into corruption. I know that when Jupiter was conjoined Uranus, I tell this story a little bit on the channel, but it's worth repeating. I discovered in my own life that I was allergic to a sugar called fructan. And I thought that I had a gluten allergy for much of my life. And it was actually this sugar fructan. And I started taking this supplement that was like an enzyme that helped me digest things. And all the pain and experience that I was having eating things like onions and garlic and things like that have a lot of fructan in it, it kind of disappeared overnight. It was remedying something that had been a problem for a long time. And in this really kind of shocking way, it was because my partner had read an article about this sugar and was like, maybe this is your problem. And it was one of those types of experiences. We might be able to have an experience like that, but in a Venusian manner, where we have this flash of awareness that helps us repair something. So what I will say is look at the Taurus area, look at the Libra area of your chart, and see if there is something, like some information that comes to you that could be directly related to that area that could actually help you to repair something that has been vexing you for quite some time. Stella says, what's the name of that enzyme? It is called FODzyme. And you can get it in little packets that you could take with you to restaurants, or you can get a little container of it. I use the little container and use it on my food at home. FODzyme. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, and they're not sponsoring me, but it has completely changed my life, and it has changed my ability to digest things that really gave me a huge problem in the past. And my dad too. Like, it was something that I inherited, and I finally convinced him to try it, and he has had a lot less suffering in that regard too. But I'm not a doctor. Make sure that you do your homework and your research with it. Yes, there you go. Okay, so with the Venus-Uranus conjunction, again, pay attention to any messages that you receive about repairing something in that area of your life. We have a first quarter moon on the 23rd. Okay, the same kind of energy that we have here. So you can see here the first quarter moon. This is the unfolding of this new moon cycle, right? So here it is at about 3 degrees of Leo, right? So what are the challenges of the unfolding of the cycle? Well, let's think about, again, what the cycle is trying to achieve. The seed is planted in the decan of Aries that is related to winning over a hostile crowd, of utilizing charisma or propaganda to bring someone over to your side. Now the sun is hanging out in the decan of Taurus that is related to making material plans, potentially because of some worry about lack. We have in that decan of Taurus, okay, you can see here, here is the decan of Taurus 1 with the 5 of Pentacles, right? Where we have these two figures that are outside of a church that are maybe have fallen on hard times. People that have prominent planets in this decan sometimes worry about their financial security, but they also have abilities to be great planners, right? This is a Mercury ruled decan, so there could be some planning involved. This first quarter moon has an extra challenge. Now, not only is it a square between the sun and the moon, but there is a Pluto T-square to this energy. So you could see the sun coming into a square with Pluto and with the moon in Leo. Now, remember, we looked at Melania Trump's chart and we saw that her natal sun is at 5 degrees of Taurus. So she's going to be experiencing a lot of pressure around this 23rd date, with a big T-square lighting up one of her most important planets in her chart. So I guess she is going to be part of this narrative moving forward. As far as what it means for us in our own lives and in the collective, so we've got that worry about resources and the need to make plans for that. We have the moon in Taurus, or sorry, the moon in Leo 1, speaking about feeling the pressure of the spotlight. Okay, so the pressure of the spotlight, it's a Saturn ruled decan. You know, Susie Chang talks about it as like a pressure cooker, where we have to become visible and we might feel uncomfortable with that visibility. Pluto in Aquarius, it could speak towards the dangers of invisibility, or the dangers of being on the fringes versus in the center selected few. Okay, so we have these, when we have the moon opposing Pluto, there's probably a fear of visibility, and that is putting some pressure on our ability to plan for our future. So this is something to keep in mind when we have that big T-square there. I've always gotten the sense that Melania Trump is not super comfortable with all of the attention that her husband brings her. I think that she would prefer just to live out her luxurious lifestyle without all of this attention. And I'm sure that she's probably going through some real challenges with what has transpired. Let's see. Painted Turtle says Mars and Virgo and the digestive issues. I usually don't even need to know the houses in medical astrology. It's just digestion. Yeah. Painted Turtle, I have Mars and Saturn in Virgo 3 and Jupiter in Virgo one. So yes, the digestive issues are real. Like my dad has Jupiter in Virgo also, so it's an inherited thing. And my daughter, and she has some digestive stuff too. She has Jupiter in Virgo. That was just passed down from from all the generations. Okay, so this first quarter moon, one thing I will say about quarter moons is think about what the sun is trying to achieve. The sun is providing the light and the motivation. The sun is trying to figure out how to plan for material abundance, potentially because of some worry of scarcity. The moon is the body that is going to take form in. Potentially in our own personal lives, we may be afraid of lack, of scarcity. We may be pushed beyond our comfort zone to become more visible with the moon in Leo. That also could lead to some secret fears about being visible. This is one of the reasons that I think a lot of us have mixed emotions about speaking up about some of these really challenging topics. Some of it is through fear. We don't want to bring about negative attention, but at the same time, we also don't want to stay silent when people that are being abused are more in more vulnerable positions. We don't want to stay silent when we could speak up and maybe change an outcome for someone else besides ourselves. This is the struggle. I'm going through this struggle. This T-square is happening in angular houses for me, like the visibility part and the desire to speak out in support of what I view as righteousness. I think it's not the most comfortable position for myself. It feels a little scary sometimes to speak out. And I think that a lot of people are feeling this right now, especially when we're dealing with such massive forces, when we're dealing with surveillance states, right? Like being able to speak out and then have the fear that like, oh, we're going to get the internet scraped by bots or AI and like maybe looking for dissent or things like that. Those are scary propositions. And I do think it's important though to still have these conversations. And in your own life, I think it's important to find out what is meaningful to you and to speak about it and to find solace in the community that supports you in that regard. So first quarter moon, increasing visibility, potentially in support of trying to work on our material security, but it running into some challenges with some fear around the collective, around technology. Pluto and Aquarius can speak towards fear of technology. We've all seen the kind of, those of us who have been speaking out against artificial intelligence, a lot of that is the corruption that is revealed through the technology and not thinking through the ramifications of it. So Pluto will reveal some of the corruption underneath the surface. So we may be running into those issues as we get to the first quarter moon here. Devin says, all the Aries stuff is in my 7th house, just pushing forward and trying to be observant, staying centered when inflammation occurs around me. Yeah. And here's the thing too, when you see these actions or you see these planets entering different houses, it can give you guidance as to what your particular role might be. Now, Devin, having an Aries 7th house is a Libra rising. One of the things that Devin may be really good at is creating a balanced perspective, like showing someone the other side of something, understanding someone else's perspective, helping other people to remain centered. He may have people around him that is, kind of getting all fired up, and he may be able to help them see outside of their own narrow viewpoint. I know he's done that for me quite a few times. I value Devin's perspective and his balanced and just view of the world, and it's helped me to get outside of some of my own maybe blind spots and start to see things from multiple perspectives. So think about what that might mean for you with these different placements. If you have this Aries stack up in your first house, it might be, you might be pressured into making a new start. You may be the one that has to win over the hostile crowd. If it's in the 10th, you might be doing that in your business life or in your public life. If it's in the 4th house, you could be doing that in your private life. You might be making a new start with your home or something of that nature. So it shows us where we can put our attention and put our energy. Devin says, I put up a post for astrologers on Threads to talk about how they mitigate with astro anxiety, and it's bloomed wonderfully. You should check it out. I saw that, Devin. I thought that was a great thread. I'm not as active on social media. I'm a lurker. I will read people's posts and I won't always interact with them. And I'm sorry if I'm not becoming more visible. What I will do generally is I will read people's posts and then I'll send them a direct message and be like, that was a great post. You made some really great points. Maybe I should be more visible about it. But yeah, some great stuff going on over on Threads. Devin's got some really great threads that are up. I would also encourage you to check out Stephanie Warner's stuff that she's been posting. I believe she works for Chani, and she's been pointing out a lot of really important things too. I think she's a Canadian astrologer who's very well traveled, but lots of really great astrologers on Threads and lots of good conversations that people are having. Stella says, I'm not in Threads. Is it accessible anywhere else? I don't know. I think Devin has a good website. Maybe there's some resources on his website as well. Okay, so that's our first quarter moon. We're trying to increase the qualities of the lunar decan to achieve the goals of the solar decan, increasing visibility to achieve more financial security, but running into an opposition with Pluto. Okay, on the day after that first quarter moon, we have planets that are starting to ingress into Gemini. Venus moves into Gemini on the 24th, all right? Scattering our attention or our desires to gather more information or to visit more flowers symbolically, like the bee that's gathering pollen. So there might be more scattering of attention. This is setting up the Sun-Pluto square and Uranus ingressing into Gemini. So we have the Sun making a square to Pluto, okay? Again, the most prominent individual that I see with this solar, this is like, I think this is Melania's birthday. So keep an eye on Melania Trump, where the Sun squares her Pluto around this period of time. Uranus moving into Gemini, we got a taste of that last year, where it briefly moved into Gemini. I will direct all of you to the wonderful book by Liz Green called The Art of Stealing Fire. I'm looking around to see if I have it near me. I don't think I do. But it is an amazing book about Uranus, where it is speaking towards the hubris of Uranus, the hubris of humanity to be godlike and to bring the energy of the gods down onto the earth. Yes, there can be lightning bolts of awareness with Uranus. There can be interesting manifestations that break us out of crystallized patterns. I think that's the positive side of it. There is also a challenging side of that where the thing that is divine, that is bigger than us as human beings, can take on a life of its own eventually. And with Uranus moving into Gemini, that genie in a bottle, I guess you could say, is technology, communication, artificial intelligence, distraction, okay? The ability to be distracted, the ability for our energy to be split in multiple different directions. So these are the things where we have to be wary of when Uranus moves into Gemini. How do we become undistractable? How do we stay focused on our highest priorities despite what is going on around us? How do we maintain our ability to reason by utilizing our own cognitive abilities without outsourcing them to technologies? I'm going to put a link in the chat that I am very passionate about. And this is something that I think will help people understand where I'm coming from on this. This is from a science fiction author called Cory Doctorow, okay? And Cory Doctorow is someone who speaks a lot about new technologies. And he has an article. It's called The Reverse Centaur's Guide to Criticizing AI. And it's through the medium.com website. And he's talking about the challenges of technology using you rather than you using the technology. And I think it really contextualized the whole AI argument and the Uranus and Gemini argument quite well. A couple things from that article just to summarize. Think of the centaur as a human head on the technology's body. Let's say the centaur is not a horse, but it is the technology. You are the one utilizing it. You are the one that's in control of it if you have the head. The reverse centaur is the technology is the head, and it is using you as a human body and as a meat suit to achieve its own ends. The example that he gives is through Amazon workers who are being monitored by cameras and AI technology to help them drive the truck, the delivery truck. And there was criticism that the drivers aren't allowed to sing. They monitor their mouth movements and things of that nature because they think that singing is distracting to the driver and will lead to distracted driving or inefficiency in delivery time, since that's their goal: efficiency in delivery, profit over people. Now, that's an example of the technology controlling the actions of the human that is driving the vehicle. The same could be said potentially when we outsource our cognitive abilities to something like a generative AI model or a ChatGPT or some of these large language models. The argument that is made is that our own cognitive abilities start to atrophy because we are outsourcing that critical thinking skill to a large corporation that has given us access to that technology for free in the beginning, like a gateway drug, to get us addicted to it, and then starts charging us for that intelligence and for that cognitive ability like a utility. This is a really, it's a little bit of a scary thing right now as for being human, where when we outsource our cognitive abilities, this is part of the Uranus and Gemini conversation. This is me making a point of saying the desire to steal fire from the gods, of being superhumanly intelligent, right? That is the promise of big tech, is you'll be like a cyborg, right? You will be able to do things faster, more efficient, blah, 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 right? And really, that is the hubris, is that to try to become godlike with our intelligence, we may actually end up destroying our intelligence and our ability to utilize our intelligence. And this article does a really good job of pointing out the limitations of the technology, the motivation behind big tech's desire to get you hooked on it, the bubble of technologies and the promises that often are not deliverable. One of the great things about that article is that they're saying AI is not going to be able to do what it promises to do. Like, there are limitations to it. And what often happens is people will make these promises so that large corporations or head of corporations will invest in that technology. So, like, for example, someone like Sam Altman, he's the biggest, proponent of this type of thinking, will try to get people excited about his open AI large language model and say, wouldn't it be great, CEO of, Disney, whatever, if you could replace like most of your workforce and be able to save $20 million doing so. And what will happen is that you will fire $20 million worth of labor, human beings. You will get to keep $10 million in your pocket as a CEO, and then the other $10 million you'll give to me. Do you see what the game is? So what they're doing is they're trying to get people to invest in growth technologies, growth stocks. If a technology has stabilized, it doesn't grow finance anymore. It doesn't grow stock portfolios. So what they're really doing is getting people hyped up about the technology so that they will invest in it and that they will fire their workers and that the people will utilize this, the CEOs will utilize the technology to try to cut costs, to put more money in their own pocket and in the pocket of the CEO. What Cory Doctorow is arguing is that the technology won't be able to deliver on the efficiency that would be able to happen with a human being in place. A lot of times what's happening with these AI models is that there still needs to be a human being to check its work and be able to fix its errors. So it's not really creating efficiency at all. And eventually what happens with technology is that there is all this capital invested into it. The technology eventually fails to deliver on its promises. The technology goes dark. This happened with fiber optic cables a few years ago with some of the dot-com bubbles. Eventually, people who are interested in like open source technology, who are able to utilize the remains of it, turn it into something semi-useful that's not what they promised, but has some uses. And this is what Cory Doctorow was saying what might happen with AI, is that we're over-promising to be able to sell to large tech CEOs so that they will fire a bunch of workers. It won't actually do what it says it's going to do. We're going to have to rehire some workers, or that technology is going to go dark. And then eventually open source people will learn how to use it in a much more stripped down fashion. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some positives to that. There probably can be some things that some good that will come out of it, like the fiber optic bubble that burst. There's some cables that got turned back on. So I'm not saying that there isn't some collateral good that comes from it, but that damage that comes from it is significant. It looks like a lot of people being fired, not because the AI can actually replace their job, but because the CEO of the company was sold on the idea of them replacing their job. And that's a big difference. And that's something that's already happening in not only the collective, it's happening in my own family. Like, my partner was laid off from her job because they basically were cutting costs and thought that a lot of what she did, which was like editing emails and writing newsletters, that could be replaced by a language model like ChatGPT. So this is already hitting home with the people that you know, like us, okay? And I'm sure it's happened to people in the chat here today. If you have a story about that, let me know. We already are seeing the bubble start to pop, though. Over the last few weeks, the generative AI model that Sam Altman created called Sora, they shut it down. You know, like Disney pulled their $1 billion investment. They shut Sora down. It's not delivering on the promises. So a lot of these tech people, they're not the geniuses that they claim to be. They're good salesmen, right? They are searching for profit over actually doing a human service or like doing good for humanity. I truly believe that. Like, they're just pulling the rug out of. I mean, they're trying to sell people on an idea, right? It's like snake oil on some level. Let me check in with the chat here. Devin says, thanks for this. Reverse centaur is a great metaphor for capitalism and economics using us for its gain instead of an economy for public affluence. It's like, instead of a human with robot parts, we're becoming a robot with human parts. Yes, yes. And Devin, you've hit the nail on the head. All of this, everything that we're experiencing right now in our collective, the AI conversation, the war with Iran, all of the bullshit leadership challenges, all of it can be filtered back to destructive, bloated capitalism. It's all economics. This is why I've been focusing on learning about economic systems and learning about alternatives to capitalism, because all of it is through extractive, destructive capitalism. This is what's destroying our planet. It's using it up, and it's trying to figure out how to make the number go up exponentially when that's not how nature works. Nature works in cycles. Nature works with homeostasis and balance. And really, when the AI bubble pops, there will, if we still have a planet, there will be another capitalist that will try to get someone excited about the next big thing and investment in that and make promises that they can't keep with that. And the cycle continues, lather, rinse, repeat. Lauren says, well, yes, it is. Says something that Venus has entered in Gemini both times with Uranus. It is a very unsavory attempt at harmonizing the spheres of the brain our brain literally operates in. Yeah. Devin says, Sam is the figurehead, 100%. Yep. Lauren says, physical halves. We know this when someone injures one half, they can't speak, the other half and can't draw. Venus harmonizes the spheres of Gemini and Aquarius. Modern is not a great thing. It slowly disables parts of the thinking capabilities. Technology and engineering the specific pathways of thought, like engagement with AI, does slowly to harmonize parts of the brain instead of challenging them. Mars is a subtle but real kind of mind control. Yeah, and I also think that the brain is like a muscle. We have to use it to keep it. If we offload all of these mental tasks to the machine, we are going to atrophy that part of our brain. There was an example of this the other day. Like when we don't use something, we lose it. Someone had a question about secondary progression techniques, and I hadn't studied that in a little while, and it took me a while to access some of that part of my brain. Whereas I use the Deccan language every single day. I use that every broadcast. It is so ingrained in me that if someone asks me a Deccan question, it's like second nature. But that's because I use it. I keep that muscle strong. My Deccan muscle is like, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know, you know what I mean? But my secondary progression muscle, not as much. Like I still utilize that technique, but less so than I do the Deccan technique. Whereas someone else might be using the secondary progressive technique every single moment of their astrological experience, and they might be really strong in that category. So I think it's true for writing, it's true for reading, it's true for reclaiming our attention. Okay, like when we offload our attention to these big tech companies, and that is something that's been proven. They are trying to keep us on these platforms because more eyeballs on the platforms means more advertising revenue. So by capturing your attention, whether it's through outrage, whether it's through fear, whether it's through whatever that is attractive to the human brain that lights it up, that is keeping you on the platform, and that is the form of mind control that we're talking about. I would also point all of you to Joy Usher's A Tiny Universe. She talks a lot about Aquarius, and we have Pluto in Aquarius right now. Talking about Aquarius, only showing you that which furthers its own agenda and casting everything else into darkness, a subtle form of brainwashing. And we're seeing Pluto revealing to the light, bringing up from the repression underground that very thing that these companies have been using mind control algorithms basically to keep you on the platform to sell you advertising. So Devin says, yes, the Ouroboros of advertisement economy. Now, that being said, there are very real challenges to living in the modern world, participating in it, and figuring out where the compromises are. I don't have a great answer for you at the moment. I'm struggling with this myself. Much of my business is online. Some of it is on platforms that are owned by big corporations, this one included, that we're on right now. And trying to maintain your humanity through doing that it's not the easiest thing to answer. What I will say is there's a couple things that I've found that have helped me to understand how to navigate Uranus and Gemini a little bit better. First thing, how do you maintain ownership of your attention? Sometimes that means turning your phone off. Sometimes that means going outside, touching grass, getting your hands in the garden, hobbit maxing, if you will. Some of it is through turning off some of the features on these apps that are designed to keep you on them. I've gone through almost every single app that I have and turned off the settings where those companies collect your data and sell you targeted advertising. Now you have to work hard to do it, but it is worth doing so, because then they're going to be using less manipulative techniques to advertise to you. Because if you're being advertised things that they know that you like, that's going to capture your attention and you become a slave to that. I would also recommend turning off the colors on your phone. I have a button that I can press now to turn off all the colors. You'd be amazed how less attractive the phone becomes when you can turn the colors off of it. I would also say that schedule in time that is not online. I schedule in time to read every day now. I've been really trying to re-engage with my ability to read. Since the cell phone, smartphone era has really advanced, my ability to sit down and read for hours at a time has diminished. And it's noticeable. And it's gotten worse in the last couple years. Like, I think that these programs have gotten more and more insidious in the way that they keep you on the platform. And I'm noticing that, and it's making me angry because I was the type of person that was an avid, passionate reader, and I need to become that again. And I do read still, but it's an effort, right? It's a willpower exercise to put the phone in a different room and things like that. And I'm tired of that struggle. So I'm scheduling in. I say I'm reading. This is 2 hours where I'm going to lock this fucking device in a box and I can't use it. Okay. And I'm going to read. And you'd be amazed at the anxiety that leaves your body when you're just in the moment with a book or with your garden or with your family or with whatever. It's a beautiful experience, and it's worth getting out of the cycle of noise. It quiets the mind, right? Meditation can be part of this. Whatever it is your choice of getting back to that state of homeostasis that isn't influenced by some giant tech company, right? It's worth the exercise. It's worth trying to do so. Now, that being said, we're spending hours together on YouTube talking about astrology. There's paradox involved, right? I will say this. One of the most damaging parts of the internet is your attention being split into tiny fragmented, like little videos, little things. What I try to do here is spend a long time with you. And maybe we spend this time talking together on one specific topic for multiple hours at a time so that we're learning how to share space with one another, not for 5 minutes, but for a lengthy period of time. I appreciate that those of you who go on these long journeys with me. So that's one way. So instead of doing multiple fragmented little things to consume, I choose to do one long thing where we spend time and spend our attention together. So there are compromises that we have to make, right? Is the algorithm kind to me because of some of these things? I don't think so. I think the algorithm has buried me because I'm not capitulating to the, little fractional noises that need to happen all the time. So it goes. Hopefully the people that need this information will find me, and maybe you all can help me by sharing it. Lauren says, Aquarius grabs the outliner, wants consensus, and its attempts to get there can sometimes be as brutal as its ruler Saturn or as entity encompassing, not in a good way, as Uranus. Neither planet cares how you get there. It just wants you there now. Yeah, I think this is one of the real challenges of one of the most negative parts of fascism is wanting everything to be homogenized, wanting everything to be, the same. It's an enemy of diversity. And I really think that is one of the biggest dangers we face right now too, is this homogenization. And by utilizing AI language models and generative AI, that is a race towards the bottom with homogenization as well. Because when nothing new gets created, it's just consuming the slop that it creates. And then it becomes more and more homogenized, and everything becomes more and more similar the more slop you feed into it. So one of the greatest acts of rebellion and resistance that you can do in this time period is to make art, to be a unique individual, to not use these tools that steal the works of others, and to use your own imagination, your own creative abilities. Because eventually, this is just a warning, friends. If you're becoming addicted to these technologies, eventually you become a slave to it. Eventually you're going to have to, you know, pay an arm and a leg just to be able to think or to write an email or to draw a picture. That's not a reality that I want to live in. So that's why I'm choosing to push back against it. And I know that there's, like I said, there's paradoxes with it. A couple more things before we wrap for the day. So the Uranus moving in Gemini, we'll keep talking about it as we move forward. Be careful of the hubris of trying to become superhumanly intelligent. I would also argue that in the book that I've been reading, Sacred Economics, Charles Eisenstein talks about with every technological advancement, like the Industrial Revolution, potentially with the AI revolution, there is a promise of leisure. There is a promise of, well, we're going to make this process more efficient so that you can have more leisure time to do things that are human. Every single step of the way, that has been a lie. Because what they will do is they will constantly move the goalposts. They'll say, well, we made this process more efficient. Now you have to produce more and more and more. The greed is what becomes insatiable in that regard. So it's not that the technology itself is necessarily evil, although we can make the argument that it can decay our ability to think. But when you have people that run the technology that are insatiably greedy, they're not going to let you have leisure time. They're going to say, well, you're twice as efficient now. Now we want twice as much production. The problem with that is that this beautiful Earth is finite. There are finite resources on this planet, and they cannot sustain this type of exponential growth. We're already seeing the pushback from the planet with rising temperatures, large forest fires, droughts, increased power of storms. The planet is suffering. The planet is crying out in pain, and it can't support this exponential growth. What we need is degrowth, monetary degrowth. That doesn't mean that we have less abundance or less things that make us happy as human beings. In fact, we probably have more happiness the less monetized every single thing on the planet is. But it just means that instead of taking the Earth's resources and turning it into a commodity, we're becoming responsible stewards of this planet instead of just consumers. Devin says, label? Oh, label everything, even emails, not made with AI or AI free. I love it. I'm going to start doing that because people need to know. I think that there will be choices that people will start to make when they start to understand how damaging this technology can be. And be honest about if you didn't use AI to use that. I mean, don't try to manipulate people with that. But yeah, and here's the thing. There are some things that are just built into things like in our search engines. A lot of those are powered by AIs, and you have to really be intentional about going in and turning them off. So, yeah. Okay. Venus sextiles Neptune and Mercury makes a square to Jupiter on the 26th. Okay, we're going to build up to the full moon in Scorpio, and then we'll end for the day with an I-Ching and an animal. Sound good? Okay. So Venus sextile Neptune, Mercury square Jupiter. Here's Mercury making that square from Aries 2 to Cancer 2, the second decan of each of them. Mercury is going to be trying to state its value system, right? Instead of talking about what it doesn't want in Aries 1, it's going to say, here's what I believe in. But it's going to be running into the need to maybe protect your opinions, to protect what it is that you're trying to communicate with Jupiter in Cancer. It could also lead to just sometimes Jupiter Mercury squares lead to like a righteousness or an arrogance where it says, I know the truth and this is it. And it doesn't leave as much room for questions. So maybe that's an aspect to leave room for questions. Venus will trine Pluto on the 28th. So a positive aspect, right? A trine. There we go. So here is Venus trining Pluto. The potential for gathering information to reveal some of the corruptions, to start to heal that potentially. There could be regards to that. Maybe it's the information that we get helps to reveal something that we can then transmute into something more positive. I think that's a possibility there. The other thing that came up in my research this week is Venus is going to be entering into malefic enclosure, but directly after going through the bending of the nodes. So this is another technique that I've learned since studying traditional astrology, where we have a planet that is squaring the north node and the south node of the moon, and it is moving away from a point of increase, the north node in Pisces, and moving towards a point of decrease, the south node in Virgo. This is the north bending for Venus, which is the most it is the peak of increase. So this might be something where you're getting bombarded by information, and now we're going to start taking all of those facts or lies and starting to work through them and move towards seeing what is useful. We've visited all these flowers. Now we take that pollen back to the hive and say, how can we make some honey from this? How do we start to release some things in our life? And that will have a serious effect, not only on the Gemini topic in your chart, but on the Libra and the Taurus topic as well. So this is setting up, though, the malefic enclosure of Venus. So there's a turning point coming on the 29th for Venus significations. Mercury also goes under the beams of the sun that next day. So Mercury's getting ready for its renewal in the heart of the sun again in May. And that builds us to this full moon in Scorpio. So if we put the full moon in Scorpio on the outside here, okay, this is what we're building up to. The sun at 11 degrees of Taurus and the moon at 11 degrees of Scorpio in opposition to one another. The moon is hosted by Mars at 16 degrees of Scorpio. The sun is hosted by that Venus that is about to enter a malefic enclosure. Okay. Now, this one is long. This is Venus at about 9 degrees of Gemini, having a square from Mars on one side, okay, 16 degrees, and then a square from Saturn on the other side. And there's not really a planet that is casting its own ray to break it up, okay? I was looking at Jupiter as far as like casting its ray in between Saturn and Mars here, but it's not casting its ray towards Venus. It's in aversion to Venus. Now, I'm going to take you through this because this is really fascinating to me. Look how this plays out over time. So here, now we've got the full moon in Scorpio in the inner circle. The sun in Taurus says balance between play and work, generosity, giving and receiving. The moon in Scorpio too is really about squeezing the essence out of something by merging with it in a very deep fashion to be able to discard it, so that there is this tension between growth and decay at that full moon. Okay. Let's see here. Devin says, I've been studying recently that once a planet moves past the bendings, they may be working on the next eclipse cycle story. Ooh, that's interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. Keep me updated on your research with that, friend. But with this Venus here, so keep your eye on Venus on the outside. And what we're going to do, we're going to go to May 1st. And I want you to just track this Venus. What you're looking for is what I was looking for here was I was looking for when Venus would sextile Mars, because then it would be outside of Mars's ray. Now, an interesting thing happens. Okay. Mars seems to be kind of moving a little bit faster. And I thought, okay, well, maybe once it moves into Taurus, it'll be the end. Well, look what happens when Mars moves into Taurus. Now, Mars is casting its ray on the other side of Venus. Okay, this is on May 19th. So now Mars's ray is cast on this side, on the earlier degrees of Venus, and Saturn is casting its ray on the later degrees in front of Venus. So we don't even get a reprieve when Mars moves into Taurus. Okay, we finally will get this reprieve when Venus makes it square to Saturn. See that? At about 11 degrees of Aries and Cancer, Venus at 11 degrees of Cancer. Okay, it'll escape it at 12 degrees. So between 9 degrees Gemini and 12 degrees Cancer, Venus is in malefic enclosure for like almost the entire month of May, which kind of sucks. Like, especially I'm thinking just personally, it's my time lord for the year. So pray for me in May. But what does that mean though? What is Venus in malefic enclosure? We may have difficulty bringing people together. We may have difficulty harmonizing. We may have difficulty communicating and holding ambiguities, right? With Venus and Gemini. So it's May 1st to May 28th. And that's what, Devin is asking about here. Venus and Gemini tends to harmonize multiple different perspectives and facts. That could be challenged in May. When Venus moves into Cancer, Venus likes to harmonize familial relationships. It's going to be in malefic enclosure throughout the first decade of Cancer, where one-on-one relationships could be challenged around that period of time. And a lot of that is coming through the pressure of Saturn and Mars, the need to strike out as individuals, the need to make new starts, initiate new things, the need to think about your own needs versus the needs of the collective or of a partner. That's really a lot of what the challenge is too. I've been struggling lately, friends, because my business is taking quite a hit since probably the last year and a half, since a lot of these large language models started to become more advanced. When people started using ChatGPT to ask astrology questions, and really for companionship and for talking things out, they're talking out complex moral problems with something that doesn't have morals or a conscience. And that has affected the work of a consulting astrologer that is trying to help people work things out. Also, just the challenge of just the economy and people having difficulty with their finances. Part of the reason that we've got a sale going on right now, like, I know things are tight. So if you've been needing a reading and you want to have a reading with a real human being, but you can't afford it, there's a sale right now, 20% off of everything, or just reach out to me. And I've been more than willing to work with sliding scales with people. So if you really do need help and you want a human being's expertise rather than a computer's, I'd be happy to work with you. But yeah, there's a lot of thoughts about how to continue to make a living as the world keeps changing. And everybody's, I think, feeling this pressure a little bit about when our jobs are threatened by technology or by changing economic circumstances. How do we get what we need to survive, etc.? My partner's going through this. She lost her job in December, and she's trying to figure out how to move forward and put herself out there a little bit more. And sometimes it's painful for your shy 12th house Sun, Mercury, Venus types like my partner and I. We're 12th house suns. I'm a 12th house Sun and Mercury. She's a 12th house Sun and Venus. We're not always comfortable in the spotlight. As much as I like coming and doing these chats on Friday, the lead up to it is what is painful, right? This was true when I was a performing musician out in public as well. When I got up on stage, it was fine, but the lead up to it, there's a lot of challenging feelings about getting up to get to the stage, right? And a lot of the ways that society's changing has definitely been challenging for both of us. So, and for many people that I've talked to in the community right now, there's a lot of changes that are requiring us to take more risks, to try some new things that we might not have tried in the past. And there's a little discomfort in the beginning of those things. Devin says, I don't know if you offer payment plans, but that was helpful for me when I was in a pinch. I would absolutely offer a payment plan. If somebody can't afford the full cost of a reading right away, just send me an email, spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to set up a payment plan. I've done that for my classes, and I'd be happy to do that for readings as well. Lauren says, Mars doesn't like timeshare guests. Speeding right through Aries. Says, well, I'll see you guys in 2 years. Try not to fuck things up too badly. Enjoy your emo punk party. Yeah. No, it doesn't want to be there with its friends, does it? It goes through Aries pretty fast and then moves into Taurus, right? And Lauren, this is the other thing too. We kind of skipped past the Mars Pluto square, which that's happening on the 26th. We don't have time to go through all the aspects of May, but I will do that next week. I'm going to go through the astrology of May next week. So if you enjoyed the in-depth analysis that you heard today, please come back next week and we'll go do on a deep dive of May and we'll talk about this malefic enclosure of Venus and that Mars Pluto square, which is Mars Pluto is always a little bit of a spicy time. But I did want to at least get you up to speed to the full moon in Scorpio. That is the peak of the new moon cycle. And then have you aware that Venus might be in malefic enclosure starting in May. So if you have Venusian things that you want to do, maybe it might be good to try to get them done while Venus is in Taurus and while Venus isn't in the malefic enclosure. All right. So let's talk about our hexagram wrap up for the day. We have, oops, hold on a second. I got an impatient cat here. Hey, Pete, you guys want to meet him? Come here, Pete. Oh, this is Pete, aka Radagast. He has a white chin, so he's a big curly Sue. Look at his little curly belly. If you're not watching on YouTube, he's a big curly gray, bluish gray tuxedo cat who has Maine Coon mix and probably a little ragdoll in him. He's a big boy. He weighs about 18 pounds, and he's been real patient today, so he's getting a little antsy right now, but he's a good boy. I-Ching hexagram. This is 57. Okay, moving towards 18. 57 is gentle influence, leading to 18, which is remedying. So we are learning how to be like the wind. Okay, this hexagram translates to humility, gentleness, wind, persistence. Okay, the judgment says gentle influence, success in small matters. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. It is beneficial to see a great person. Jack Balkin, in his book, The Laws of Change, says, the best way to affect the situation right now is through gentle, persistent action and subtle forms of influence. The text compares the right way of proceeding to that of wind. A mild breeze seems inconspicuous, but it can penetrate everywhere. Its effects are gradual, but are considerable over time. It is delightful and unassuming. Therefore, it is not feared or resisted because it is gladly and gratefully accepted. Because it is accepted, it has influence. The key is to be both gentle and persistent. A violent or forceful approach will be counterproductive and meet with a rebuff. Good advice for a 7 planetary body plus Chiron stack up in Aries, which is the definition of a violent or forceful approach, right? A gentle approach will be more readily received, and if you are persistent, will eventually have the right effect. Because you can only influence a situation in subtle ways, clarity and single-mindedness of purpose are essential. If you are uncertain about what you want, or if you waste your time pursuing multiple conflicting ends, good advice for Venus and Uranus and Gemini, right? Your message will be dissipated and you'll have no influence at all. Therefore, you must be absolutely clear in your mind what your goals are. Define your objectives and stick to them. The wind is most powerful when it blows in only one direction. You will not change the situation all at once, but only through steady and persistent influence. Okay, we have one changing line, and it's at the 5th place. Been doing a little bit of research into just these changing lines. There's a lot of really good information in that book about what the actual lines represent, and in this case, the 5th line is more associated with a social consciousness. You're going from an individual consciousness to a social consciousness from the bottom up. So like, for example, the bottom line would be representing like your instincts, your emotions. You move from up to the 2nd line with rational self-interest. 3rd line is often inauspicious, being a line of striving or ambition sometimes. And then we've got a social consciousness in the 5th line. And then in the 6th line, you kind of moved beyond the situation towards one of a sage, where you're kind of outside of the energy. So here we've got a changing line in the 5th place, one of social consciousness. So it says, perseverance brings good fortune, regrets vanish. There is nothing that is not beneficial. There is no beginning, but there is an end. Before the change, 3 days. After the change, 3 days. Good fortune. It is now possible to change the entire situation for the better. To do this, you will have to consider thoroughly what you need to do and then carefully prepare a plan of action. Although things may not have gone your way recently, with steadfastness and perseverance, you can turn the situation to your advantage and the result will be highly successful. Nevertheless, you must keep a close eye on how things develop and be sure to reevaluate the situation and make necessary corrections and adjustments as you move forward. Take your cue from the theme of the hexagram, the gentle but consistent influence of the wind. The problem you face can only be reformed through persistent and continuous effort. This means that you must be thorough and attentive both before you make changes and after you begin. Be patient. It will take some time for the results to appear, but when your strategy begins to produce good effects, you will know that you are on the right path. Okay, so patience, not an easy thing to come by with a big stack up in Aries, but really that is the balancing influence right now. Now it's changing to the hexagram 18, which is called remedying or working on what has been spoiled. It also translates to repair or restoration. All right, so this is, it says, let's see here. Remedying what has been spoiled, supreme success. It is beneficial to cross the great river before starting 3 days, after starting 3 days. Although the theme of this hexagram is decay, the hexagram also symbolizes the possibility of hope. This hexagram is concerned not so much with the natural forces of decay as with the decay that comes through bad habits and unwise choices. Such decay results from inertia, carelessness, muddled thinking, selfishness, and lack of discipline. In order to remedy this decay, you must adopt the opposite traits: energetic activity, careful preparation, thoughtful deliberation, determination, and commitment. What has gone wrong through mistake, lassitude, or inaction can be repaired through self-discipline, commitment, energy, and enterprise. Thus, this hexagram symbolizes both the inevitable weakness and shortcomings of humans that will cause conditions to decline, and the abundant potential of human freedom that can bring about renewal and recovery. This is a message of hope. The text tells us that working to repair what has become stagnant promises supreme success. That is why it is worth crossing the great river. That is undertaking something difficult and arduous. Something possibly has gone wrong in your life. It may be your environment, or it may be your own habits and attitudes. The problem is the legacy of previous bad choices. This has existed for some time, although you may not have realized it. Its origins lie in past action or inaction, mistakes of judgment, or missed opportunities. Even so, you now have the ability to do something about it. You can make things better. You can start anew, but you must make the effort to do so. Inertia is a big reason why things have come to this state. If you let things slide, the problem will not go away. Indeed, the situation will only get worse. Success in remedying Success in remedying what has been spoiled requires, first of all, that which you ascertain has gone wrong and why. You must ask yourself how things got this way. In order to do this, you will have to face the situation honestly. You may have to confront unpleasant and unresolved issues in your life or your environment, and you may have to acknowledge the features of the situation that you previously neglected, denied, or hid from yourself. The task calls for deliberation and self-examination. This may be emotionally difficult, but gaining insight is essential to success. All right, so we have to self-examine. We have to see where we may have gone wrong with something. We have to look and this is where the Aries energy can be positive. maybe there's something where we've been afraid of starting for a long time, and we just have to really push through it. We have to say, screw it. I've got to do it. I've just got to take the first step. I don't have to do it all at once. I have to take the first step and then consistently take steps afterwards. Okay. Dad Notes says Aries Sun, Aries Ascending, and Scorp Moon, 4488. What do you think? Dad Nodes, I think that you've got some really intense astrology coming for you, friend. First house, Aries, you've got a stack up of planets, probably a lot of desires towards making new starts, probably a lot of challenges right now around needing to take responsibility for things and bring balance back to your life. And you've got a big full moon that's going to be activating your Scorpio moon, friend. So hang in there. One day at a time. I think patience is the way to get through. This is what this hexagram is teaching us right now, friend, is that we need to make a new start to repair some of the bad habits that have accumulated over time. Dad says, working on something for the entire world right now. Yeah, I think that that's good. As long as if it's something that serves your community, I think that that's a good thing. I would say one step at a time. And I would also say start small. Sometimes the hubris of trying to do something too big can lead to the whole thing falling apart before it has a solid foundation. I'm speaking from experience. Oftentimes when I start something, the scope of it becomes grandiose. And what I've learned is to make it smaller in the beginning and then let it grow organically over time. So instead of doing something for the entire world right now, Dad, you might want to start with doing something for your neighbors. Start for doing something for your local community and see if you can build that into something that can maybe have the effect that you're looking for. All right, so this brings us to our animal of the week. And our animal of the week is the grouse. So here is a grouse. This is actually the greater prairie chicken, which is in the grouse family. And you can see that they have very elaborate displays, right? They do these beautiful dances where they spread their tail out and they make these interesting like drumming sounds. It almost sounds like a kind of a deep drum. And they have these beautiful like air sacs that they're making this sound with. I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez about the grouse. Really cool animal. Grouse symbolizes, now before I begin, this is Aries III energy at its best. This is like, attention gathering displays, to use your charisma to gather a following. This is grouse energy. Grouse symbolizes an elaborate attention grabbing display of action. Whether this is dancing or making sure you're seen and heard at work, or preening to garner the attention of the opposite sex, grouse will help you to get all the attention you seek. Sage grouse's mating display is very copious, with its spiked tail feathers, inflatable air sacs in its chest, a mane of white feathers, and a unique circular dance. When sage grouse inflates and then deflates its air sacs, a loud popping noise is made, which sounds like that. It's got this kind of, I've heard this noise. It's a crazy noise, like almost like something you've never heard before. Grouse has feathered nostrils and legs, and in the winter, its toes even grow feathers and small scales to help protect its feet from the cold and the snow. This animal has talents towards beauty. It is an excellent dancer, graceful. It is good at manifesting. It's about rhythm, sensitivity to vibrations. It's very showy. Challenges include maybe potentially complaining, crankiness, greed, often irritable, out of sorts, power hungry, repetitive, and ritualistic behavior, too over the top. When grouse appears, it means you need to take time to dance. Lose yourself in the music, letting your body move freely to its rhythm. This will allow you to connect to your true essence. Allow your mind to be free without worry and stress, and be at one with the sound around you. Grouse means everything has its place in your life, and when things get out of place, you might freak out just a little bit. Stay calm and put everything back where it goes. You're deeply attuned to patterns, rituals, and your own specific way of doing things. Just remember the world isn't going to end if things don't go according to plan one day. Grouse warns about being too rigid instead of going with the flow. When you're out of sorts, grouse can help you return to center, to preen, and to get back into the majestic flow of your dance. This animal assists you when you need to look your best for an event, increase your positive rhythm, or de-stress to loosen up through movement. Grouse helps you to manifest by showing you how to use movement, intention, and performance to attract what you want to come into your life. Try creating your own dance or hand movements to add power to your intention during manifestation exercises. This increases the flow of energy to you. This also allows you to reach greater heights and levels of consciousness and enables faster paced spiritual growth. Your understanding of the spiritual realms has enhanced tenfold. What was once unclear and out of reach is now readily available to you. Grouse teaches harmony and to enjoy the natural rhythm of life instead of trying to force your movements along your path. When you quit pushing and start dancing, you can lighten your energy and allow yourself to become one with the universal flow. Grouse is a great stress reliever. It can give you energy and enhance your ability to trust others. I love that. I mean, sometimes what Aries will do is it'll get angry when it has too much energy, when it gets backed up, right? And I think dancing and just getting that out, sometimes just shaking it out can be really helpful. You know, just putting on some music, letting that energy go somewhere and not having it necessarily have any specific purpose, right? Dad Note says, absolutely, little baby steps, but I can see where it could go. And yes, thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you being here, friend, and good luck with your endeavor. I hope you're successful in what you're trying to achieve. Lauren says, that bird might be my new spirit animal. There you go. It's beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it a beautiful animal? Why is it so pretty with the colors? I will say this, you know, the creation is amazing. I mean, there's so many beautiful creatures and animals and trees and people on this planet. It's all part of this beauty of creation. And it's worth protecting, and it's worth embracing, and it's worth enjoying. So yeah, when I connect with animal spirits and with nature, it just helps me appreciate the glory of all of this that we're experiencing here on this planet. And it's a good reminder when there's a lot of negative noise right now that a bird like a prairie chicken or a sage grouse exists. You know, it's beautiful, and it's not concerned with any of this right now. Lauren says, plus I always wanted to take you dancing, Spencer. I tried to send you a song once that would just make the moves happen. My plants know everything by Lava. Nice. Well, someday, friend, maybe our paths will cross and we'll just share a song and share a dance. That would be nice. All right, friends. That's what I've got for you today. Do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. Try to get if the algorithm isn't going to support us, we got to support us organically by sharing it with people that you know. Word of mouth is always very helpful. You follow me on social media at Spencer Michaud. Also, if you came late, I'm having a spring sale right now, 20% off all readings and recordings until May the 1st. If you need a payment plan, if you need a sliding scale, I'm happy to work with you. I would just like for you to be able to have access to the guidance of the stars from a real human being, from someone who thinks about these things, that can help you support you on your dreams, but can also hold you accountable for some of the blind spots that you might have as well, in a very gentle and I think loving and almost kind of paternal or brotherly or sisterly way on some level. So if that sounds appealing to you, reach out to me at spencermichaud.com or reach out and send me an email, spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for all of your wisdom in the chat. Hang in there. We're going to be back next week for the astrology of May. And take a deep breath. Go outside, dance a little bit, put on your favorite song, shake your body, get some of that tension out, and we'll get through this together. Appreciate some of the beauty that's all around you as well, and that'll help balance some of the challenging things we're going through. Be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.